Sound check. All right. Just wait for it to actually show up on my YouTube channel. 'Cause it seems to be bugging out more recently. All right. Looks to be working, so. All right. Looks like we're live. Robert, thanks for taking the time to come on my show and have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, sure. I've been blogging, I guess, since around 2010. I've made two films: The 21 Faces of God, which was a film about the major arcana of the tarot, and kind of the path through the tarot. And then I just recently came out with 2 weeks ago, Twilight of the Archons, which is about consciousness and money a little bit, and the intersection of the two. And for my day job, I'm a university lecturer. I teach negotiation, social media, writing, that type of thing at a university.
Cool. So you asked to come on my show to talk about your video. What is it about?
About my film.
Yeah. What is your film about?
Sure. Twilight of the Archons is what it tries to do. It's a critique of the materialist worldview. I guess I found your show through Bernardo. I'm a big fan of Bernardo Castro, and I really like his ideas. And so what it does, it critiques the materialist worldview, first looking at consciousness itself, and then taking another idea, for example, about money, what we think money is and what it really is, and what we think consciousness is, and maybe it's something else. So sort of in the general paradigm, we have these two ideas of consciousness and money. And are they really what they appear to be? And so I try and connect the two and show, well, money maybe isn't what it appears to be. And maybe consciousness is something beyond what we're taught and what our culture points it to.
And what exactly do you think it is? And what do you think it is that it tells us? The culture tells us. Yeah.
Consciousness would be, from my experience, everything we perceive. Everything from our perspective, we perceive within a field of awareness. Everything appears in that field of awareness, and that field of awareness would be consciousness itself. And that's how I would see consciousness.
I have no idea what that means. That kind of sounds like gibberish as far as I can tell. Like for me, consciousness is a material process in the brain. That is what seems like all the evidence indicates. Materialism is kind of just an interpretation that we value physical things because physical things essentially govern our lives. I don't see an issue with that. So what exactly do you disagree with from either of those two standpoints?
Yeah, but when you say it's that the material objects that you experience, how do we experience a material object outside of our field of perception?
We don't need to. That's a contradiction. We don't experience it outside of of what we're literally experiencing, but it can exist without us experiencing. So if no consciousness beings ever existed, stars would still exist. Stars existed before any minds ever did. The universe existed before any minds ever did. Whether or not we experience it doesn't make a difference.
But that's a speculation, though, right? I mean, have you ever experienced anything outside of your field of awareness?
Nope, it's not a speculation. It's based off of evidence, inductive evidence.
What evidence?
Inductive evidence. So we make testable predictions.
But what evidence do you have of experiencing something outside of perception?
I don't need to experience anything. I have inductive evidence. So I can say there are things that exist before I experience them because I have a present day experience of something that I predicted would happen if something I didn't experience happened. So like
right.
Bob killed Jane behind the barn, I can then find Jane's body. Even though I didn't experience Bob killing Jane, I can still infer it happened because the evidence is there.
Right, but when the evidence for Jane's body, what is the evidence for Jane's body?
The cosmic microwave background, the evidence of the stars.
How do you measure the cosmic microwave background?
With, I forget what it's called. There's a big telescope in space that measures it.
Okay, and what does that big telescope? How do you encounter the information from that big telescope?
It's measured on a computer.
Okay, and how do you interact with the computer?
You don't need to. It doesn't matter if we interact with it or not. It's there independent of us. Like all the evidence is there. It doesn't matter if we interact
But
with it.
how do you get behind perception? I mean, it goes back to
Your perception doesn't matter. Your perception is irrelevant. Like
when you
the
go back
stuff
to
is there.
idea, how do we contact?
It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like the stuff is there independent of our looking at it. Like the moon is there even when you don't look at it. The fact that you need to look at it to see it doesn't matter.
When you look at a leaf and it's green, where's the greenness?
Greenness is in our brains. The leaf doesn't have greenness. Greenness is a property of how our brains interpret electrons.
Where in the brain is greenness?
The visual cortex.
Okay, but can you show me greenness in the brain? If I say show me greenness.
Yes, we've literally done that in a lab. We can literally do that.
Greenness in the brain.
Yep, it's specifically in certain neurons, certain parts, in the visual cortex. You can just Google it if you want.
Oh, okay, I mean, I'm saying, but where in the brain is greenness?
The visual cortex. I already answered that.
Well, I didn't. So you're telling me that you can go into the visual cortex and you can find greenness and you say, there it is.
Yep.
That's green.
Yep. Specific neurons. You can turn it off. You can turn
I'm
it on.
not sure the science backs that up. What about the smell of coffee?
Same thing. Neurons.
Can you find the smell of coffee?
Yep. Everything. It's all just in the brain. It's all just physical stuff in the brain. You can turn it off and turn it on. It's just a neuron pattern, and that's it. That's literally what it is. That's literally what all colors are. All abstract objects are just literally patterns in the brain and nothing more. That's the consensus.
Quality.
Nope. That's just gibberish language that we use to describe the patterns in the brain. The patterns in the brains are all there is. That's why everyone in neurology. Quality is gibberish labels that we apply.
You can't use the word gibberish. If anyone uses the word quality, they're speaking in gibberish.
Yes, because it does not correspond to anything. It's like saying my
nothing has a quality.
No, quality is an abstract label that doesn't mean anything. Like magic. Magic is an abstract label that doesn't mean anything. It's a human concept that doesn't mean anything. What does mean something is neurology. Neurology does mean something. So that's all there is. So all of those things you mentioned, it's all just neurology.
What is neurology? What is real about neurology that's more real than cold? You said qualities don't exist. So cold doesn't exist. Neurology exists. What is neurology?
Neurology is your brain state, or the study of your brain states, the study of the brain neurons.
The brain states.
Yep.
What's a brain state?
The patterns of electrical and biological signals going on inside of the brain at any given time.
Pattern in the brain. What is that?
I just answered that.
What is it?
Patterns of electricity, electrical, and biochemical things going on in the brain at any given time.
A pattern of isn't a pattern a quality?
No, quality is an abstract label we give to something that exists. Qualities don't exist. There are things there. This is really not hard. So the brain exists. There are patterns in the brain. That's all you need to know.
That's all I need to know.
Yep.
I mean, I can't know something else. That's it.
Yeah, that's all you need to know about consciousness. Consciousness is a product produced by the brain. You don't need any semantic gibberish. Just say, okay, there's the brain. There's patterns in the brain. That's it. Because of all the novel testable predictions in science. All of the novel testable predictions in science.
Have you ever observed consciousness?
Doesn't make a difference.
But have you ever observed?
Does that stop the novel testable predictions? Nope, so it's irrelevant.
Would you recognize the fact that you've never observed it?
It doesn't matter. Does that stop the testable predictions? Nope. Testable predictions work whether or not I observe them.
You said you've observed consciousness. Where have you observed it?
What? I never said that. I mean, I am conscious. I guess that means I'm observing consciousness, but I never said I observed consciousness. We have what I observed doesn't matter. So my argument is, I'm going to mute you. Stop. So the argument is that we make novel testable predictions. Those are correct. What I observed doesn't matter. So stop asking what I observed, because that makes no difference.
Well, what I'm asking is, you said you've observed consciousness.
Where did I ever say that? Where did I say that?
Observed it.
What?
No, okay. I mean, just a question. Can we observe consciousness? For example, can you observe consciousness?
What does that have anything to do with what I said? Like I said, we make novel testable predictions.
Question. Can you observe consciousness in somebody else?
Okay, but that has nothing to do with what I said. I said we make novel testable predictions.
Changing the subject then.
Okay.
Can you observe it in somebody else?
I don't need to.
You don't need to.
Nope.
But you said it comes from the brain, right?
Yep.
So why can't you observe it in somebody else if it comes from the brain?
You don't need to. Like, you don't need to observe it in someone else to know it comes from the brain. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I mean, fine, you don't need to, but can you observe it in the brain of somebody else?
Potentially in the future, we might be able to. Not right now,
But now we can't.
which
What
is
about in a
irrelevant. That's irrelevant. Can I look on the back of Mars? No. Does the back of Mars exist? Yes.
but
Irrelevant.
we can look at a lizard, right?
What?
We can look at an animal, like a cat.
We can't see the back of Mars, but we know it's there. So the fact that we can directly observe something means nothing. We don't. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter if we can directly observe it. We can't directly observe the Big Bang. It happened. Indirect observation is a thing. It counts as evidence. So direct observation isn't relevant to the conversation.
So we don't need any direct observation of consciousness to be able to describe it.
Correct. Just like we don't need any direct observation of the Big Bang to describe it, or direct observation of dinosaurs. Like we don't need to directly observe a T-Rex to know there is a T-Rex there because we got these things called fossils.
Okay, but we do. Would you say we do experience consciousness on a daily basis?
Yes, but that's irrelevant.
Irrelevant to what?
Knowing that the brain is what produces consciousness, what we experience doesn't matter to the testable predictions or the evidence or all of neurology. Like,
Okay, but so we can make no predictions about consciousness then?
no, we can make tons of predictions about consciousness and do. That's literally the entire field of neurology. We don't need to directly observe it to make
I would agree
predictions.
with that. I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
Okay.
But all of those observations are made within consciousness itself, right?
No, they're made independent of consciousness.
So then you can observe consciousness. If
You
it's
don't need to. I never
independent
said that. You don't need to. That's
wait,
irrelevant
wait,
to what I
wait, wait,
said.
wait, hold on one second. If you can make an observation of consciousness, it has to be outside of consciousness, right?
Yes, and we do that just fine.
So we can observe consciousness then. You said we. So now you say we can observe
Indirectly, yes. Indirectly, we can observe consciousness all the time.
Well, what's the difference between directly observing consciousness and observing it indirectly?
Directly would mean first person experience. Indirectly would mean third person experience.
Okay, so what are the third person experiences of consciousness?
Everything in the field of neurology.
Okay, which is? Give me an example.
The ability to know what decisions you're going to make before you make them, the ability to look at your brain state and to know exactly the shapes and letters and words that you're thinking about at any given time. Those would be some of the common examples. The ability to know that certain parts of your brain are active so we know what you're thinking, and we can stop them and zap them at any given time to prevent you from thinking those things.
Those are predictions that you're making within the actual field of awareness, right? So let's go back to, because I think it's a very interesting point about being able to predict people's decision-making predictions. That's pretty well established, right?
Yeah.
Give people an experiment, the A/B experiment with the apple and the whatever, the apple and the orange. Before the person decides, it can be predicted what, by very small amounts of time, right? Which one they're gonna choose. Do you want an apple or an orange, right?
Oh, okay. Was that a question?
Yes, it's a question.
What was the question?
The question is, you can decide, right?
Yes, sure.
You can see you can have a person who's going to decide between an apple and an orange. And I believe there's experiments that have been done where you can predict what the person's going to decide before they actually decide.
Yes.
It's a very small amount of time, but it can be seen in the brain.
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying that all consciousness is that decision-making process?
No, that's one part.
Which neuron fires? The apple?
No, that's one part of consciousness. Consciousness is much more complicated than that one part.
Right. Right. But you're saying that being able to predict that is being able to see consciousness?
Indirect observation, yes.
So, but aren't we predicting a perception?
I have no idea what that even means. It's indirect observation. So if the
No,
Big Bang happened, we can predict what the
predict a
consequences are going to
perception.
be.
You're going to have a perception or a
That's
thought. You're going to
irrelevant.
predict.
So that's irrelevant gibberish. So indirect observation, like we predict if the Big Bang.
What's irrelevant gibberish? If
Wait,
everything
wait.
we
I'm
say
going to
is
mute you. I'm going to mute you. So indirect observation, we see.
indirect observation, indirect observation. What's indirect about it?
Okay, one second. Muted. All right. So indirect observation is that we see if you predict if the Big Bang happened, then we'll see the signs of the cosmic microwave background. We then look with a device and say, oh, look, we do see the cosmic microwave background, therefore the Big Bang happened. We never saw the Big Bang, but we saw the consequences. So if we predict consciousness is a product in the brain and has this effects that we can see, like them picking an apple and orange, we predict that if we zap them in this part of the brain or we look at this part of the brain, we'll know what they'll pick before they do. Then we observe, they did pick it. That predicts what consciousness is. So if there's consciousness here, we'll see this. If there's the Big Bang here, we'll see this. Indirect observation. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm unmuted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. But don't you think we have to define the difference between what a perception is, what a thought is, and the entire field of consciousness in which these things appear?
No. Why would we need any of that?
Why would we need to do that? So consciousness is no more than a decision-making process.
No, it's lots more than that too, but that's one of the features, yes.
Okay, but by describing one of the features, is that enough to describe the whole thing?
You don't need to describe the whole thing. Like the fact that we can describe a part of the Big Bang doesn't mean we know everything about the Big Bang, but we still know there's the Big Bang, it happened then. So you don't need, discovering one part of the thing doesn't mean you need to know everything about the thing.
True, true. But can we know for sure that consciousness emerges individually from individual biological creatures? So does each, say, conscious creature have its own specific consciousness?
We can't know anything for sure. That's not, certainty doesn't exist in science. We know with the highest level of certainty, yes.
Why would you say that?
Because of all the evidence,
Being
neurology, all of the entire field of neurology and cognitive science. What?
I'm just curious. Are you a neurologist?
No, I've studied it though.
Okay, you studied it. Mhm. So you find no mystery in consciousess at
There's
all.
tons of mystery, but that isn't an argument for anything. So an argument from ignorance is, oh, there's something we can't explain. That doesn't tell us anything. Doesn't tell us anything is or isn't.
Did I say that we can't explains anything?
You said there's a mystery. So there is, we don't know everything about anything. There's always a mystery. There's a mystery in what is inside of this coffee cup. Does that mean it's magic? No.
Who said magic?
I said
Where
magic.
did you get this word magic? I made a film. I never once mentioned the word magic.
I didn't say
I
you
had
did.
nothing to do with magic. I'm not Mr. Magic Man.
I didn't say you did. That wasn't.
Then why are you bringing up magic?
To bring up the point of saying there's a mystery is irrelevant. So saying, oh, there's a mystery there, that doesn't, it's irrelevant.
There's a mystery there because there is a certain amount of mystery, and I find it interesting. Okay. For example, if I have a thought, like a computer, say, has produces a line of code, right? Like take visual facial recognition software. Am I saying something strange? I mean,
well, you haven't. I need a complete sentence. So you said take visual recognition software, and so I'm like, okay.
Okay. I mean, is it possible that I say something without the smart ass expressions? I mean, can we get past the snarkiness?
No.
I don't think I've been rude. I don't think I've been impolite. I'm just trying to make a statement.
Okay, and I'm waiting for the statement. Like, what is the argument? You're saying it really slowly. I'm like trying to follow, and you say a part of a sentence.
smart enough for you, but maybe you could, have a little patience with the idiots out there.
Well,
With
I'm
visual,
still waiting. So you said we take visual recognition software and what?
right? Well, I'm trying to get to the point of the Chinese box. Does the computer actually know what it's looking at?
Chinese room.
Does it give the Chinese box? Obviously, you're a neurologist. You'd be familiar with the Chinese box experiment, the thought experiment of the Chinese box. Does the computer actually know?
Chinese room.
Does it,
Chinese
the Chinese?
room, and it's a
Oh, I'm
philosophy
sorry.
thing.
I'm sorry. I called it boom in my box. So the computer never actually gives meaning to what it's seeing. But in our field of consciousness, when we see something, we give meaning to it. So we can watch ourselves think, right? We can have a thought and observe ourselves thinking. So it gives a second field to it. So what is it that's watching ourselves think? Like if I count to 10, I can watch myself count. I can observe myself counting. Can a computer do that?
Yes.
It can watch itself counting, and it
Yes.
knows what it's doing.
If you program it to, yes. Like there's a recent paper published by 2 Minute Papers, big AI artificial intelligence YouTube channel that shows computers doing exactly this. Like I forget what it's called, GP7, GP5 AI. Yeah, it's just creating an abstract thought. All it does is it creates a model of what it's looking at, and then places that model in the context of some other model. That's essentially all we're doing. There's nothing special there. So it's like if before we have abstract thought, you just have direct experience. So I experience a TV or whatever. Abstract thought is just the ability to take that and create a mental image, like a smaller world in my brain where there's an image of a TV, and
A
I'm
smaller world?
yeah, it's like in a video game world. So like you have a computer that creates an artificial world made of ones and zeros that represents reality but isn't reality. That's all your brain is doing.
So a world is just ones and zeros. No, like for example, you said it creates a world. A computer can create a world. Imagine we have a world where people fall in love. Will the computer know what that is?
If it's programmed to, yes.
So you can program a computer to know, understand love. Could you
Yes.
explain that?
Yes, that's really actually pretty simple. We've already known that in neurology. We can already shut down love. We know that certain people can't feel love, and certain psychopaths, narcissistic personality disorders, that it's just a specific combination of patterns in the brain and that can be shut down and damaged under many different contexts. So
Okay,
you can
but
just,
how would you program a computer? You said you can program a
yep,
computer to feel love and to understand it. How would you do that?
you would just have it identify that neurological pattern and see if this person has that neurological pattern, they're feeling love.
So you would identify love as numbers X, Y, and Z, for example,
Yep.
some sort of algorithm.
Yeah.
Okay. So the computer understands love. How?
I'm not sure what you're asking here. It can identify love.
You're saying
In order,
pen
in
and
order,
light.
you like, can it
Pen and
feel
lighter
love? Are
love
you
each other.
asking? Is that what you're asking?
Pen and lighter love.
What?
Pen and lighter love each other. So if I put the code here and I say pen and lighter, they love each other. And computer will say, no, they can't love each other because they're a pen and a lighter.
Yeah, because they don't have brains, so they'd have to have things with brains that have the capability to feel love. And then a computer that doesn't have that can still identify love. It can still say, "Oh, that thing with that brain is currently feeling love right now." So if you're asking how do we get a computer to feel love, we would have to give it a brain that is capable of having that emotional response, and then we just program in that emotional response.
And what about, for example, the taste of beer?
Same thing. So all of our first person sensory experiences, the color of red, the taste of beer, meaning of words, all of it's just a specific kind of a brain state. And if you program it into a computer with sufficient programming capacity, it'll feel it too. You just need to figure out what the correct pattern is to simulate consciousness.
all within context. So you're saying that everything could be programmed at some point. With a big enough computer, you could program all context into the computer. So the computer would have this sense of being aware of everything, and it would understand the meaning of love, what it is.
Well, I wouldn't say everything. I'd say we could.
Whatever that. What did you say?
I wouldn't say everything. I mean, we could make it to the same or a higher level than a human brain. Yes, I don't know what you mean by everything, but yeah, we could make it.
Everything within a human's field of perception.
Yeah, for sure.
Awareness.
Yeah.
Everything could be programmed.
Yep.
Because it's limited. Our field of awareness would be limited.
Yep.
So you program this all in, and from that, you believe that the computer would become aware. What we define normally aware. Are you aware? I mean, are you aware of the room you're in?
Well, there's the sense experience. So we'd have to give it a sense experience, and then we'd have to give it a conscious process. So the conscious process itself is a separate thing in the brain that then interprets the data it gets and
Why would
builds.
you have to give it a sense experience?
What?
Why would you have to give it a sense experience?
To make it understand everything humans do? Because that's what you asked, was like, how do we get it to? You said, well, if we give it all of the stuff that we're experiencing, which would include sense experience. To do that, we'd have to give it some kind of a camera and a touch, taste, sensation sensor, and then put those into a conscious processing unit, which then builds them into an artificial world kind of a thing and applies values to them, which then it translates to an emotional center, which gives it feelings. And so we'd have to like replicate each part of the brain in a computer sense. But yes, we could make it into essentially a human.
So you see that there would be no problem creating, for example, a complete simulation.
What do you mean by complete simulation?
Say, take a community, like a small community of 10 people. You would be able to create a computer program that could simulate the entire experience of those 10 people, say, in a house for a month.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the hypotheses in physics, is that we're all in a simulation. The simulation hypothesis. Like, I think it's actually the holographic principle. All 3D information can be represented on a 2D sphere of binary bits. Yeah.
And what would be the motivation behind their existence? Would you program in, say, survival, for example?
We could.
It's motivated towards surviving, for example.
We could program any motivation we want, and motivation of eating carrots or something, like, would be whatever we programmed it to be.
And do you think the human experience would be, at some point, maybe not in the near future, but at some point, would be entirely possible to replicate?
Yes. If we had a sufficiently powerful computer.
By simply replicating every experience that we would have, and you believe all of those experiences would be inside the brain?
I think so. I'm not sure what you're asking there yet. Like, if we would have to replicate the brain itself, we'd have to like create a physical copy of the brain out of silicone or whatever, and then we could give it memories that would replicate our memories, then yeah. That's actually what we're working on in AI technology.
What about the idea of actual meaning?
What do you mean? Meaning is just an emotion like love, or hate. It's easily.
Going back to the Chinese box. Oh, I'm sorry, the Chinese room. I didn't mean to offend you. When you read the book, when they read the word, for example, hell. say they read hell, we have a certain reaction, a cultural, it gives, it has a, or God, for example. Would the computer actually be able to put that in context and give it, have it, give it all the qualities that we would?
Yes.
From obviously from a cultural, religious, whatever you want, psychological standpoint, it would have that.
Yeah, if we gave it the same memories we did, yes.
And what about fear?
Yep, also an emotion that we can be turned off and turn on in the brain, just like any other. Like zap this neuron, you feel fear.
Computer experience fear?
The same way anyone would. You have to input an emotional part of the brain to replicate the, I think it's the amygdala part of the human brain that simulates the fight or flight response, and to cause that chemical reaction, which then elevates the cortisol levels, and the cortisol levels decrease the amount of cognitive receptibility, and so it makes more intuitive responses, and then causes the hair to stand on the back of your neck and causes your heart rate to increase, and then those are the things that cause fear. That's what fear is. It's a physiological response and an emotional response. Those two things.
And it would be able to be aware of the fact that it is feeling fear.
Yep.
Or would it simply just be a reaction, like you said, the hair stands up, certain things accelerate. But would it be actually able to say, I am feeling fear?
Yeah, so there's two parts there. One is like if it was a dog, it wouldn't be able to say, I'm feeling fear. It only has the ability to react, but it's still conscious. And the second is a higher level consciousness, which then takes its experience and puts it into an artificial context. So it creates like a miniature version of the world in its head and then analyzes that from a third person perspective, which is, yes, we could program that into a computer also.
So then you would be a firm believer in the whole simulation theory, that we could be actually in a simulation.
Absolutely, it's possible. I mean, I don't think it's likely, but it's definitely possible.
Why don't you think it's likely then?
Because of morality, I think that once we get the technological capability to put an entire universe or simulate an entire universe at that level of accuracy, it'll be immoral to create a world like this one with all the death and rape and murder and stuff. So it's unlikely that if we do start to create artificial universes that would create one this immoral, it's probably there'd be laws against that. So it's unlikely that this is a simulated universe.
But where does morality come from? I mean, where does morality fit into all this?
Undiscovered law of nature.
It's a what?
Undiscovered law of nature.
What's an undiscovered law of nature?
Morality?
No, but you said morality is an undiscovered law of nature.
Yes.
And an undiscovered law of nature.
Yeah. You could Google moral naturalism, Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy. It has an explanation there.
Of morality is an undiscovered law of nature.
Yeah, it's
not simply just a survival mechanism,
right.
a survival strategy.
Yes. So moral realism, the position that
So
morality.
what's undiscovered about that? I don't understand. What's the mystery?
So moral realism is the position that moral statements are true independent of human thought. So humans don't exist, moral statements are still true or false. And we can know these in the same way we know any other scientific facts, by their referencing some complex feature of the natural world, and we can measure them. It's moral naturalism, Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy. You can read it in detail.
Encyclopedia of Philosophy. But I mean, why couldn't you just embed morality as an evolutionary strategy?
Oh, you could. This is just, I think it's more than that. I mean, either way it would work. You could do either one.
But why would it be more than just an evolutionary strategy? Why do you need it more to be an undiscovered law of nature?
You don't need it to be. It's just a hypothesis. So my hypothesis is that morality is higher than, it's a thing that's going to affect more than just evolutionary bases. So if we discovered life on other planets that weren't evolutionary, they would also have morality, and that all the different versions of life that could exist would all converge on the same kind of morality, like they're going to converge on the same kinds of laws of physics. What?
You're just thinking that it seems like a bit of a fantasy, no? That if we found life in the universe somehow, it would follow whatever moral code that we have that evolved through our own evolution.
That's the hypothesis, but it wouldn't be ours.
What would be the usefulness of this hypothesis? How would you test it?
You would make predictions about how morality is going to change in the future. given certain situations. I don't see how this is really relevant to the topic, but yes. So I make the
You think
prediction.
morality is not relevant to consciousness.
Uh, I said it's relevant to why I think we're not in a simulation, but yeah, we can program consciousness
We're
without
not in a
morality.
simulation because of a morality that we haven't discovered yet, that
What?
whatever creatures got beyond us would adhere to.
Yeah, so if there is an objective morality that exists that we haven't discovered yet, and all life would essentially discover this like they discover the laws of physics, then it would be unlikely that they would make a world this immoral given the fact that it doesn't adhere to this moral law. Now, obviously, if there is no moral law, then maybe they would be, but I think there is, and so it's unlikely, I think, that we are in a simulation.
For morality reasons. Well,
Yes.
what about, for example, when scientists not when, for example, if you make create a bacteria colony, that's a simulation, right?
Sort
You
of.
take bacteria, put it in a petri dish, aren't you creating a simulated world, so to speak?
I guess figuratively, you could call it that.
So would there be any morality going on in this with these bacteria?
No, because they don't have any conscious wills.
They don't have a conscious will. What is a conscious will?
The desires, like I like ice cream right now. Bacteria don't have any desires, like they don't care.
You don't think bacteria like to eat certain things more than others?
Nope, I don't think they have any feelings at all. I think they're like rocks.
No, but you don't think bacteria encounter certain things they like to consume and other things that they're repulsed by?
Nope, I think they're like rocks or magnets. They don't like anything.
I mean, my wife's a bacteriologist, and she's always talking about different media for different bacteria. So there's some media that they enjoy, and some media that they can't they reject.
No, it's like magnets. So magnets don't enjoy being the positive and the negative don't enjoy being together. They're attracted because of physical forces. It has nothing to do with enjoyment. They don't feel anything.
So at what animal level do you change this definition from magnetism to feeling?
At some point when you have brains and a sufficiently complicated brain,
So, like for example, can a rat feel something?
probably.
What
Very
about an
likely.
ant?
That one's debatable, but I'm going to go with yes, but just very limited things.
But I'm still confused about that. And if you have a physical repulsion towards something, isn't that good enough for
For what?
feeling, so to speak?
No, because like magnets have physical attraction and repulsion. They don't feel anything. Like everything is physically attracted to gravity to each other. They don't feel like particles don't feel each other.
So you're saying that bacteria are nothing more than magnets.
Well, essentially, yeah, they don't have conscious states. They're just a physical object like a rock that's interacting with other physical objects.
But they physically don't have any sort of a feeling sense. So when I don't know, if you kill a bacteria, it doesn't feel the pain, so
Right,
to speak.
right.
But an ant might feel the pain.
Possibly. I'm not sure on that one. I don't know enough
But
about.
I'm just saying that at some point in animal life,
Yeah,
there would be some sort of a pain.
yeah. Rats for certain can feel pain.
Yeah, definitely. And I think ants probably could feel it too. So that reaction, that physical reaction of that has more significance than a bacteria just being repulsed by a smell, or I don't not a smell, or some sort of reaction, some sort of chemical reaction, and backing off. You would say that would be different fundamentally.
Yes, like one has a conscious state and the other one does not.
Oh, so you said so now a conscious state. Can you define that?
A sense of being, like a direct awareness of reality. Like bacteria have no awareness; they're like rocks. Rats have awareness, and ants probably have awareness
But why would you say bacteria don't have any sense of awareness?
because awareness seems to only exist in brains, given all of the best evidence of neurology. Same reason I think that there isn't dark matter in the middle of the Earth, because all of our best evidence indicates dark matter only exists in certain galaxies on the edges and fringes. It doesn't exist everywhere.
Well, I mean, when you say dark matter, what is how would you define dark matter?
Dark matter is a kind of matter in the universe. It makes up about 25% of all matter in the universe, which causes an increased gravitational lensing effect around galaxies that isn't, it's separate from normal matter like the stuff we see around us. It's not like this kind, but it's still there and makes up a significant portion of the universe. And the way we know it is because of the rates of gravitational lensing are significantly more than what could be caused by normal matter in a galaxy.
Yeah, I don't think it's just gravitational lensing. Isn't it actually the mass of galaxies is not enough to keep it rotating around, say, around itself? That there's not enough mass to keep it together. That from the mass that we can see, it should separate, and it doesn't.
Sure.
So you're saying that we can look at a galaxy and we say, okay, that galaxy has dark matter, but this galaxy doesn't.
They all have dark matter. It's just not here, like in our direct vicinity of like the Earth, because there's regular matter, and that isn't sufficient, which means there has to be some other thing, which is dark matter.
But doesn't that seem a little bit arbitrary?
What?
The fact that we would say, well, it's not in our solar system. There's no dark matter in our solar system because the laws of physics seem to work very well within this solar system. But if we look to a distant galaxy, there is dark matter, but it's not within. It just seems kind of arbitrary to say, well,
No, ours does have dark matter too, but it's just not the same as the regular standard matter. So there's a difference. So when I say not here, I mean it's not within the standard matter. It's got to be something else. I don't mean literally it's not within our solar system anywhere. It probably is in our solar system.
yeah. I mean, I would just find when people speak about dark matter, a lot of times it seems like almost like a mathematical placeholder for something that's missing with the laws of gravity on a very large scale. So, okay, we call it dark matter, but maybe who knows? Maybe it could be a problem with our conception of gravity. That doesn't seem to work on the quantum scale, and it doesn't seem to work on the massive scale. It just works within certain boundaries. Maybe there's certain limits to our conception of gravity works within these limits, but on the extremes, from our perspective, it loses. There's something missing.
Yeah,
From a
or
math,
there's just a kind of matter out there that doesn't reflect light, and it adds to the gravity, which is dark matter.
or it could be a problem in the math, right?
Unlikely. Possible, sure. It could be. We could all live in the matrix, but it's unlikely.
No, but I mean, like even at a quantum level, trying to measure gravity at the quantum level, it doesn't work. The numbers just they go off into infinities. You can't measure it. You can't measure the gravitational effect between two electrons.
If you, things with that are moving at the speed of light don't have mass, but I mean, you can actually measure mass of things those small. It's smaller than that you can't like at the Big Bang, but that's not really relevant to dark matter. Like the fact that general relativity doesn't answer everything doesn't mean it doesn't work to answer like where dark matter is. It's not like there's one question here in this one realm which is a completely different topic, therefore it can just we can say it's wrong about everything. Like not really.
No, I didn't say it was wrong about everything. I didn't say that at all. I said within certain parameters, it works wonderfully. It works beautifully. But at the extremes, I always find it interesting. These extremes, that gravity's at the extreme doesn't work.
It
It
only
doesn't work.
it only seems to not work at the small extremes.
Dark energy. So it's like on the large scale, there seems to be something in the math that doesn't seem to work. And then obviously in the quantum, at the very quantum levels, you also get problems. So maybe it's our math, our theory that's off, and there isn't dark matter. Actually, so I listened to a lecture on that. That it could be like you say, or it could be our conception of gravity has issues.
Yeah, I'm thinking I haven't seen any issues on the macro level. Most of those have been confirmed. Pretty much every prediction Einstein has made has been confirmed on the macro scale. So it seems more likely there probably is dark matter. It's
And
possible.
what about What about dark energy?
Well, that's for certain. Like we can directly observe that pretty much. It's just the rate of expansion of the galaxies away from one another, getting
But what
faster.
but what is it?
Uh,
Heard.
what?
I mean, I listened to a lecture by an astrophysicist, and it was interesting the way he began it. He said, "Look, your concept of dark energy is as good as mine. So we have this concept, and it explains certain things, but what it actually is." And he said, it's, at least from his point of view, very difficult to define.
Well, yeah, it's just
But anyway,
this the space between universes. That's all we know.
it's a rate of expansion. So you shoot a bullet and it starts going faster and faster and faster. There's something's happening, right?
Yeah, like the space in between them is growing.
Right, right. That possibly one way of saying it. No? Of saying it. Anyway, anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I mean, I did want to talk about your view on materialism. Like, why do you have a problem with materialism? Like, it seemed like you were bashing it a lot in the movie.
For example, where did I bash it?
Where you were drowning the guy in cement, the capitalist guy.
I was drowning what?
There was a part in the movie where there was a clip of a guy who in a suit, like a big CEO guy, and he was being drowned in cement.
Yeah, that's a film by Sorrentino of a guy who's being killed by the mafia. I don't know what it has to do with capitalism.
No, I got the feeling that in the video that
Shoot on.
what?
He looked like a capitalist because he had a suit on,
Yeah, it kind of got that feeling from the video that materialism is bad.
and it has nothing to do with capitalism. So anyone who wears a suit's a capitalist.
Okay.
I mean, all that's saying is a guy is dying, and I'm sure Ich habe genug by Bach, right? I've had enough. So just so somebody dying, the famous cantata by Bach, Ich habe genug, I've had enough. He's going into cement, and it's life needs meaning. If we're gonna face death, it needs meaning. And I think if you carefully watch the film, I never say it has to be true. It just has to work. The myth has to work. And the myth, I personally think that our older myths have stopped working. They've stopped giving us meaning. So when we have to confront death, it's difficult. Maybe more difficult now than it was when people's myths matched more sort of general cosmologies. And so that was kind of the point of the film. One of the points of the film.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, like confronting death when you admit there isn't a God would be more emotionally challenging than if you believe there is one. Sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems I have with materialism is that it doesn't give us meaning. It gives us physical pleasure. It certainly improves our lives. It's improved technology. It's extended. I'm not sure how much it's improved the quality of life, but it's given us, for example, technologies that, on one hand, make life more pleasurable, but on the other hand, they're provoking certain instincts in us that maybe are making us more anxious, more unhappy, and they certainly don't give us meaning, especially when you're confronting death, as in that scene.
Well, yeah, sure. Saying there isn't a God doesn't give us anything. It just says there's not something, and you need to replace that with something else like humanism or a value in helping other human beings or improving lives. Atheists find meaning in other things, not usually a God. And they usually find meaning in what they do to improve people's lives in the world, and that's how they cope with it.
In like social causes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's certainly that's certainly a possibility. It gives you meaning, but does that give us enough meaning? Is that enough? Are social causes enough?
What do you mean by enough?
I mean, if we look at mythologies, and there's one point where Campbell talks about all mythologies have a transcendent element to it that gives us some feeling of that we transcend our physical beings, our bodies. These modern mythologies leave that part out. And what I would say is that leaves them less powerful, less workable.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, I was reading an article. They were talking about the happiest marriages in the world were from people who were religious conservatives. Two religious conservatives marry each other. They have the happiest marriages. And the second level were two progressive couples. They seemed to marry. But it was interesting how it seemed like the couples whose lives had some sort of meaning, either in social causes or in religious beliefs, they seemed to be happier. Because happiness is the end. I mean, if we're happy, I think it's an important thing to be. So I think a mythology needs to give us some sort of meaning. I'm not sure that a mythology based on, say, social causes is able to really give us that meaning. Because in the end, fine, the social cause, let's say the problem is solved. Then what?
Oh, you got a question from the audience. Timcast asked, "What is your favorite whiskey?"
My favorite what?
Whiskey, like the drink.
Whiskey. I'm more of a bourbon drinker, actually. I don't drink anymore. I gave it up. But back in the day, I used to really like Maker's Mark on the rocks.
Yeah, I've never been a drinker either. I don't like. I've never been good with bitter. I don't like bitter stuff. I'm usually into sweet. I like coffee though. Coffee's good.
Yeah, but I guess I gave up. I gave up the booze a while ago. It wasn't helping me.
Yep. Bill asks, "Isn't that a false equivalence of materialism, though?"
How so?
Well, I imagine something like the view, like you can get meaning in things from material causes. Like you mentioned, the leftist marriage is a really happy one, and all they value is material things, usually about relationships. Therefore, materialism can provide the the kind of happiness and meaning, or like the second most or second best kind of happiness and meaning.
On a second tier level, but I think the meaning that can come from, say, a deep religious experience or a deep spiritual experience, that kind of meaning, I'm not sure can ever be reached in a pure materialist kind of worldview. I'm not sure. At least I don't think it can.
Uh, Amy asks, does he have a specific reason for why he's a theist? Like, are you a theist?
We'll define theist.
Someone who believes there's a God, that God exists.
Difficult question. I would say I like to believe in things I can experience. So I can experience the sense of awareness. That is something I can experience. And I can experience profoundly. The concept of a God, it doesn't really fit into, I would say, at least currently where I'm at, I wouldn't say of a God out there. No, definitely not. A God out there, definitely not. I think God would be a metaphor for something within our experience here and now. So I don't know if that would be considered a theist. Honestly, I'm not trying to play semantic games, but I'm not really sure if you would call that a theist.
Yeah, that's fair. So, like, some people say they experience God. John Bubble is asking, so do you not experience God? And if someone does, do you think that's a reasonable position for them to take?
What, say again?
He asked, do you experience God? And like other religious people, they experience God. And you said you only believe in things that you can experience.
Yes, I think if someone had an experience and they express it as within the language, say the archetypical or mythological language of a god, but for them it is real, then yeah, if it works for you, I think fine.
What inspired you to make your movie?
When I made the last movie I made, I was very into archetypical mythological sort of journeys, and I found that in the tarot, that journey of the major arcana had never really. It's not that I'm not saying I'm the first one to call it a journey, but think of it as sort of the hero's journey. So I got into the hero's journey, and as I got towards the end of it, I started getting into kind of into Vedanta a lot, Advaita, that kind of thing. And I realized that there were a lot of places where they meshed, where the Western, especially the Western esoteric tradition and the Vedantic tradition, sort of mixed. So on one hand, I was kind of interested in that. On the other hand, I had worked in banking, and I've always been interested in money. What actually is money? What is it? How is it defined? And how do we see it? How do we use it? And how is the definition of money kind of affecting us? So it's kind of two very different things. And I was going to make the second movie more about money, but then I wanted to connect it to our that materialist worldview, consciousness, and money, and I put them together, and what came out came out.
Roy Lindsay asked, "What is your movie and where can you find it?"
Oh, it's the name of it is Twilight of the Archons, and just go into YouTube. It's for free. It's 100% free. So.
All right. Cease to Know asks, TJump asked him if his claims about meaning are true, how can he explain the long tradition of existentialism outside of religion?
Right. I always found existentialists to be actually digging very deep into what is a religious dilemma. It's because in the end, a lot of people say, I believe in God, or I believe this political theory, or I believe that. But the existentialist says, oh, wait, what is I? And it's a profound exploration of that concept that we have of I. And so I actually think that the existentialist is poking deep into that question. So I never saw the existentialist as necessarily not spiritual. I just think it's a different type of spirituality. That word you spirituality, I know what you mean, but you know what I mean, like that transcendent sort of existential. I always found it very, very close.
Yeah, Joking Atheist asks, can you give an example of what a profound experience is? I struggle with the term profound. Is it not just an experience?
That's a very good question. What's the difference? And I guess it's a little bit like pornography. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. So I mean, it's like, for example, if you have someone take 5-MeO DMT, I mean, you come back from that and you say that was a profound experience. But I think it's something that shakes you. It shakes your whole identity. It's almost like going to a different dimension.
How would Twint ask, how would Robert differentiate experience from delusion, like when you in the taking the drug kind of a thing? If you could.
No difference. No difference. I think there's actually no difference between it, because it's I think I would say it all the same. Like, for example, our dreams. I wouldn't differentiate our dreams from our day-to-day experience. They're both experiences we have within perception, within our field of perception.
Yeah. So Funk Bob asks.
Excuse me?
There's a related question. Funk Bob asks, can dreams be profound?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the experience in a dream, I mean, how can we differentiate the experience in a dream from the experience in daytime? Is there any difference?
I would say there is.
If you say there is, what is different about it?
I'd say the amount or the detail in the experience is the difference.
Yeah, but it's just a relative sense of difference, right?
I guess. Yeah, but I'd say like I have significantly more data and feeling when I'm apparently awake than I am sleeping. So I think that's what the difference would be.
Right?
What?
There are dreams that are incredibly vivid, that you can remember are much more vivid than your average mundane daily experience.
I don't know about that. I don't know if there's ever been a dream. Like, there's definitely vivid dreams I've had, but I don't think they've ever been as vivid as the mundane daily experience, because the mundane daily experience has all of the minutia in it, like I kind of feel cold right now, or that's little prickly thing in the back of my neck that's like a little rock or whatever. Those things don't happen in my dreams, and so all that minutia detail seems to make the world seem more real when I'm awake, because that doesn't really exist in dreams.
But when you're dreaming, do you have any sense of it not being real?
Most of the time, yes. Most of the time, I can say this is a dream.
Oh, so you can consciously dream. That's not, a lot of people can't do that. There's a word for it.
Ugh.
It's not vivid. It's not vivid dreaming.
Yep,
It's
I know what you're talking about.
fuck, I can't
Something
remember, but
dreams.
you know what
Like
I'm
it's
talking
something
about.
like
It's
vivid dreams or something like that.
lucid, I believe the
Lucid,
word.
yeah, that's it. Yep, lucid dreaming. Yeah, I usually during
Right,
my
lucid.
dreams.
You can lucid dream. That's difficult. A lot of people can't. I've never been able to. I've
Well,
tried.
it's sometimes like mostly I can just realize it's a dream. Doesn't mean I can do anything in the dream. Like I can't really control it most of the time. I can rarely do that. But normally I recognize that's really dumb. This is clearly a dream. So like when I look out the window and I'm like, I'm driving off the edge of a cliff, I'm like, nope, this is a dream. This is ridiculous. I usually figure it out pretty quickly in my dreams.
But I mean, does it really make a difference if we're in the dream world or in the real world? Because if we experience, like, not like you, but for example, when I dream most of the time, there's no difference in my sense of I, who I am in this, having this experience. I honestly, I can't remember the last time I was in a dream and I said, oh, this is only a dream. Don't worry. That never happens to me. So when I'm in that world, it's as real as this world. I think at least a lot of people dream like I do. So for me, it makes no difference because that sense of I is just in a different world. When I wake up, it's this world. But I don't really think there's a difference in my experience, at least for me.
Crow Ignite Wolf says, I don't usually have continued conversations with people in my dreams.
Yeah, that's very true. Neither do I. Very rarely. I'm like I occasionally have had profound conversations in dreams, but not often. But it doesn't make it less. It's like I walk in the woods. You know, I don't have a conversation with anybody. So it doesn't make it less real.
Uh, Joking Atheist says, my problem with the term profound is that it seems to be smuggling in some baggage that could be misinterpreted. I think that some experiences just have more value that is completely subjective.
I didn't quite get that.
Uh, I think he's saying that whatever a profound experience is kind of subjective, and you could just define anything to be a profound experience, but it doesn't necessarily have any more or a more accurate description of reality than the less profound experiences, I guess.
But you wouldn't put certain qualities on experience. I mean, there are certain. Think about time. When time goes quickly, when it just seems like just when it goes quickly, we're usually repeating experiences that we've had. So we just don't pay attention and the time just kind of runs. But it's like when you're driving and you wake up, you're like, oh shit, did I fall asleep? No, you're just, but when you're in a completely new place, in a new experience. So I guess novelty, extreme novelty would be a way of explaining profound, extremely novel. That way time would slow down in that sense of wow. And I guess you could define it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can understand that. I've felt that before. A lot of people are saying they can't read in their dreams. I don't know if I would agree with that one. I can read in my dreams.
Yeah, that's a very common experience. And when they teach lucid dreaming, one of the things they teach is, for example, and many people when they dream can't see their hand. So if you look at your hand, I'm just repeating whatever people said here, but they say when in these courses on lucid dreaming, what they do is they say, put notes all over your house that look at your hand and say, I'm awake. And apparently, I've never experienced this. Sometimes in your dream, if you look at your hand, you can't see the fingers. And so people realize they're dreaming and they become lucid. And I've heard people can't read in dreams too. But you've been able to, what have you read in a dream? Like a sign or
Yep.
a book?
Mostly signs and computer screens. Like I've dreamt of myself playing video games and reading the computer screen. I'm like pulling up my programming language to type in a code to make the game easier. Very silly.
Yeah, I can't. I remember working very hard on certain projects, and when I slept, I was actually working on them, but I can't remember if I was actually reading them. It is fascinating, though. They've done tests with people, for example, piano players, if they're practicing a piece and they're practicing intensely, when they sleep, there seems to be some sort of repetition that goes on. So when they wake up, they actually improve the performance as if they had been practicing. Now it's not 100%, but it was like 60% or something like this. It was fascinating.
Well, I know
So
that happens naturally. Like when you sleep, your brain naturally processes things, and so you always do things better. I don't know if the dream would have anything to do with that, but we definitely know that sleeping helps you to improve all skills that you were doing prior in the day because of the how the brain reallocates itself during sleep.
but there did seem to be a correlation between practice in, for example, playing the piano, practice just what do they call that? When you're not actually playing the piano, you're just playing it in your head, and sleeping. It was very interesting how the levels went down, or for boxers, things like that.
Brenda asks, "Is this live?" Yes, Brenda, this is live. The Maverick asks, "What are your proposals? Like, what would be your proposals based on your movie? What do you think we should do?" Or
In the film, yeah. Well, one of the practical proposals was actually very much based on modern monetary theory, that we should, considering what money really is compared to what most people think it is, modern monetary theory could have a lot of positive. There could be a lot of policies based on MMT that would I propose in the film that could help improve society in general.
like what?
Well, for example, I'm not a big fan of UBI because I do think that money is, in its essence, stored value. And what value is stored as work. So what money is, say a piece of gold, is the work it took. What's stored in that is the work it took to get the gold. So that's where I can exchange the work I did to get the gold for you giving me salted fish, for example. And what modern monetary theory says is, well, there's no limit on the amount of money that we can produce. So if we valued certain works in society, for example, the work of a mother raising a child, could we produce enough money to say, could we value that as work, put a value on it, and give that to mothers when they had children, for example?
Why do you think money is stored work? Because I think money is pretty arbitrary. We print off like I forget what it's called. The Fed prints money every year just to artificially inflate it, and money is created by banks because they loan out more than what they have. It's essentially just made up. Like, why do you think it's stored value? What?
Banks don't loan money.
Right. They just make it up and then give you a number in your bank account.
It's just a ledger of when they create a deposit. So deposits are created when loans are created. So all it does is it just say here, it's like a ledger saying, this is what I owe you. That's the money that's created. And as you pay it back, obviously it's destroyed. So what we could do, but if you look at money from a historic point of view, because I was talking about somebody with this on Reddit the other day, and a lot of it has to do with definitions. What you define as a sovereign currency is a different issue. But when we historically talk about money, I mean, would you agree that a silver coin, like the dollar, which is the toll, which it's like some Dutch weight of a coin that the Spanish called a dollar, that the United States adopted as a silver dollar? No, would you agree that a silver dollar is money?
Sure.
Right. So in that sense, what's stored in that money is the work it took to get the silver, mine it, melt it, stamp it, etc. It's a little bit different though if we begin to speak of sovereign currencies. What is exactly a sovereign currency? It's just kind of an accounting tool. So you have to be careful with the definitions.
So if you're talking about money, when I think of most money, today's society, none of it is stored value. Most of it is fiat currency that's just been made up, and it's essentially just a confidence mechanism to.
But think about when you go to, say, Bank of America and get a $100,000 mortgage. So all Bank of America says is, okay, you have signed the promissory note, we'll monetize it. Here's our ledger. So they create a deposit in that moment. They give you a ledger, and here's the $100,000, and you spend it. Great. So in that sense, yes. But what about what you have to do to pay back? What you do to pay back that 100,000 to Bank of America is work, right?
Sure.
You can't just sign, you can't just create, like a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just go back to Bank of America and give them another IOU? And you can do that. I mean, I've done that. Borrow money to pay another debt, sure.
Well, you
But
can
at
file for
some
bankruptcy, and so you can just dissuade the
file for
debt.
bank. Yeah. But I mean is if you're going to pay that loan back, most of us to get money have to work. Or somebody who has worked and created money gives it to us. But behind most money is work, except for banks or people who have access to leverage.
Because if we look at the world's current debt, it's I think 300 times the amount of all worth of all money and work in the world combined, or something. Because the debt right now is exponentially.
Well, I mean, take the States. I mean, what's our debt?
What's our debt? Like the country's debt to everyone else that we've paid money to and said we're going to pay it back.
Yeah, it's like 20 something trillion, I think. 25 trillion, something like this. But if you think about what if you include unfunded liabilities? If you include unfunded liabilities, whoa, then you're at like 60, 70 trillion.
Yeah.
And when you talk about unfunded liabilities, I always found it fascinating that we have a national debt, which is owed generally to, bondholders. And then you have something that's owed to the people, which is not called a debt. It's called an unfunded liability. I just found the language of that very interesting.
Joking Atheist asked, what's your thoughts on Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is just, for me, it's just money. It's just another type of money. Maybe I'm missing something because I lack the programming sort of idea, but for me, Bitcoin is the same as gold. I don't see any difference between Bitcoin and gold. One's digital, one is, material. It takes there's a limited resource of Bitcoins, right? What is it? 21 million, I think.
Yep.
Bitcoins. In gold, there's obviously some limit to the amount of gold there is. I don't know what it is, but there's some limit. I mean, if you took all the gold ever mined in the world and put it, I think
2 Olympic swimming pools.
2 Olympic swimming pools. So, there's some limit to that. So they're both limited. Both of them take an enormous amount of energy to mine, so to speak. And because there's this scarcity around them, they have value and they hold the value. Gold holds the value it takes to mine it and get it out, and a Bitcoin holds that value that it takes to go get it and mine it. So I don't really find the big mystery about it. It just seems entirely to me obvious.
Tim Cast asks, was the election stolen? ?
The election stolen?
I think he's talking about American election, Trump versus Biden.
But what particular? Was it stolen? I think. That's just such a broad question. If you said something more specific, maybe
it's specific to American politics because a lot of the Republicans say that the voting machines were hacked and that the Democrats illegally stole the vote. That's what he's referencing.
Oh, I have no. I never got into the whole voting machine thing. What I did find fascinating were journalists that I respect a lot, like Matt Taibbi is someone I have a lot of respect for. Glenn Greenwald, I have a lot of respect for. And they were silenced in a way before the election. And I thought that was kind of strange. And then I remember that Hunter Biden stuff on the New York Post where they banned the New York Post from Twitter. I found that all a little bit dodgy, but that doesn't mean it's stolen. It just means that there were certain people that didn't want, someone to win.
Yeah. Brenda was saying this question wasn't very specific if you're not an American. Like you're not, are you in America right now?
I'm about as American as you can get, but no, I'm not living in America right now.
Right. So yeah, that's what I thought. He's not from America. So it wouldn't, it's only specific if you're like in the.
Why would I from America? Because I'm not physically in America.
No, I mean because this was a very recent event. The question was referencing a very recent event in American society. If you aren't in the society during the time, then it's not as specific, and so it would be understandable why most people wouldn't understand the reference that that question was making.
Have you ever been an expat?
What?
Have you ever been an expat?
Nope, I don't know what that is.
An expatriate?
Nope, I don't know what an expatriate is.
An expat is is someone who lives in a different country. No, and being an expat has changed enormously. I was an expat in the late 80s. And when you were an expat in the late 80s, if you had asked me like that question, I would have had no idea. I mean, I would read the Herald Tribune once every 2 weeks because it was expensive. But now, it doesn't make a difference where you are. I mean, you know what I mean? The same nonsense gets thrown at you if you're in, Montana, or if you're in, Mozambique.
Cool. I think that's it for all the questions right now. Thanks for chatting. Enjoyed the conversation. A lot of good, interesting stuff from the questions for sure. I will let you go. I'm going to get some food. I'm getting hungry too. So thanks again for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time, and I'll talk to you later.